Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Sudan's military blames saboteurs for deadly clashes in the capital, whilst the opposition alliance says that the army is to blame as delicate negotiations about a political transition continue. Also in Somalia, hundreds of students take to the streets in protest after exams that they have already taken are cancelled because of online leaks. The whole process is due to start again at the end of the month. And cattle hustlers in South Sudan are using increasingly sophisticated and deadly tactics, with fatalities from the raids on the rise. But first, Sudanese protesters were back on the streets of Khartoum on Tuesday, a day after at least 4 people were killed in clashes. The deaths are the first to be linked to demonstrations since months of rallies led to the ousting of longtime strongman Omar al-Bashir in early April. Now, the military council that's been ruling the country since has blamed Monday's violence on saboteurs. The Sudanese opposition alliance, though, says that security forces are responsible. The fatalities have come as a disappointment to protesters' hopes for change.
What happened yesterday is unacceptable. The Sudanese people are the priority. And we're observing Ramadan.
The army say that there are troublemakers among us. If that's the case and the military council knows, then why are they saying that they're with us? Why did they decide to protect us and to topple the regime? And why is this being dragged out for so long?
We, the Alliance for Freedom and Change, put the whole responsibility on the military council for what happened yesterday, because they are supposed to maintain security in the country and at the sit-in too.
Well, protesters are still at a sit-in outside army headquarters in Khartoum, where for more than a month now they've been calling for civilian-led leadership. Opposition and military chiefs met again on Tuesday to thrash out the details for a transitional authority. Monday's fatal unrest has heaped more pressure on those negotiations. Well, Nadia Massi is in Khartoum for us. She joins us now. Nadia, so we're hearing conflicting stories about what led to Monday's violence. What can you tell us?
Protesters saying different things. A number of protesters who I spoke to saying they were pretty sure it was the rapid special forces that attacked protesters. Now, that's a militia loyal to the old regime that are particularly easy to spot because they wear these red berets that make them very distinctive. But there are other people out there who say it was too dark to see who was shooting last night. And there are others, the US Embassy being one of them here, who says that it is the military council that holds ultimate responsibility for what happened last night. They say that it was during the course of barricades being moved that the military elected to fire tear gas at civilians, and that's when a number of lives were lost. But irrespective of who it is who's found to be ultimately responsible for the deaths yesterday, that violence is going to do little to dissuade protesters of what is really their ultimate fear, which is that the old guard, that the regime is doing what it can to continue to hold on to power and to stymie the democratic process here. The violence will be seen as just yet more evidence of that.
So when you say the protesters, do you mean, though, the opposition alliance that's currently in talks with the generals? Because those talks continued on Tuesday. Is what happened on Monday likely to affect those negotiations about a political transition plan?
Negotiations are continuing nonetheless today. We haven't heard a final statement from the opposition groups tonight. We did hear from the military saying talks are continuing today, but that doesn't mean protesters aren't deeply suspicious of that process. And remember, they haven't actually elected the opposition figures who are representing them in those talks. Until very recently, Sudan hasn't had a formal opposition that could legally function very easily in this country, and that means that there aren't really well-known political figures here who are standing in the sidelines who really represent the opposition figures in the street. And so there is actually a little bit of a disconnect between the opposition figures who are negotiating with the military even up until today, and many of those people who we've been speaking to in the streets who perhaps some of them don't trust the negotiations at all, saying that none of the negotiations with the regime can be trusted and that they think they need to pursue their own course, ignoring the military itself.
Thanks very much, Nadia Massi, there for us in Khartoum. Now, al-Shabaab extremists have claimed responsibility for a suicide bombing in Mogadishu that left at least 3 dead on Tuesday. Several buildings were destroyed when a car packed with explosives detonated at the gates of a district office. The bombing's the first since the start of the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. Al-Shabaab militants regularly ramp up attacks during that period. Now, Somali high school pupils protested in Mogadishu on Tuesday over the cancellation of exams, the papers for which had been leaked online. The results of 6 examinations that have already been taken have been binned, and the whole process will have to start again at the end of the month. Nicolas Chemin tells us more.
Students in Somalia are fuming. They've just been told that the 6 exams they have just taken have been cancelled. The government decided this after the papers were leaked on social media. The students will have to take them again at the end of the month.
We sat exams these past 3 days, but then the Education Minister announced the exams were cancelled and postponed until the 27th of May. We won't accept that.
We're protesting because we want our results for all the exams we took. We also want the government to fire the Education Minister.
We don't want corruption. It is corruption. They don't care about us. They are selling the exam papers.
31,000 students across Somalia are affected by the cancellation. Officials said they were considering blocking social media during the period of exams. In recent years, other countries on the continent, like Ethiopia and Algeria, have also blocked social media in order to preserve the integrity of exams.
Well, here in France, respects were paid on Tuesday to the 2 soldiers killed whilst rescuing 4 hostages in Burkina Faso. Cédric de Pierrepont and Alain Bertoncello were honoured at a ceremony in Paris led by President Emmanuel Macron. 2 of those kidnapped were French citizens who were abducted whilst on safari in Benin near the Burkina border. Benin's opened an investigation into what happened and has also praised its own Fiacre Gebedji, a tour guide who was murdered when the Frenchman was snatched. The kidnapping is part of rising instability in the region. On Tuesday, bishops in Burkina Faso spoke out about a surge in jihadist attacks as 4 Christians were killed in the north of the country. Now, cattle raiders in South Sudan are using increasingly sophisticated tactics. Raiders are now more heavily armed, better organised, and frequently deadly. The result has been a marked increase in the loss of life.
For the herder communities of South Sudan, this field of cattle is effectively a living bank account. For many, this is their only source of income, an asset seen as more important than currency. So it's no surprise that these prized animals are often the subject of cattle raids. But after the outbreak of civil war, guns replaced traditional spears as the weapon of choice for raids and defence against them.
It's good to have a weapon, because it helps you to protect the cattle from people who want to steal them.
Since the signing of a power-sharing truce in September 2018, bloodshed from the conflict has lessened, but has increased in cattle raids.
Cattle raids have become violent because of the weapons. Back when we used to fight with spears, nobody died.
In the Nuer and Dinka cultures, the country's 2 most important herder communities, the cow is everything. The reverence of cattle even finds its way into marriage customs. In South Sudan, it's common practice for men to purchase a wife in exchange for a given amount of cows, or to use cattle as a dowry.
The best cow in South Sudan could cost $700, $600 per cow. So, and that is the first class cow. So you can see how important a cow is in society. If you have hundreds of cattle, you have millions of dollars, of course, at the end of the day.
According to the UN peacekeeping mission in South Sudan, 218 members of herder communities were killed this January in tit-for-tat attacks. Almost 3 times more than were killed in the 4 months from October 2017 to January 2018.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.
Fake news. Noun. false stories that appear to be news, spread on the internet or using other media. At France 24, our job is to provide you with information that's been verified. We check sources, we check facts, we sort what is true from what is fake.
At the France 24 Observers, we verify photos and videos circulating online. If they're fake, we let you know and tell you how we spotted them.
In Fact or Fake, we dig into viral stories around Europe to shake out the truth from the trash.
Every day on Info Migrants' website, we fight fake news spread on social networks about the reality of migration.
France 24, news based on facts.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.